Good morning. Today, Beth and I would like to invite you on a hike in the Galilee. We will be visiting towns, villages, and places in which Jesus may have spent time during his years in Nazareth and around the Sea of Galilee. Beth and I took such a hike a few years ago called the Jesus Trail. We arranged for our luggage to be transported to each night's lodging while we hiked the 40-mile trail in 4 days, beginning in Nazareth and ending in Capernaum. Nazareth was the hometown of Jesus, and Capernaum was where he lived for several years during his ministry. As we walked through the hills of Galilee, placing our feet in perhaps the very places that Jesus did, it makes biblical history come alive and draws us closer to him. Pilgrimages such as the Jesus Trail or the Camino de Santiago in Spain, which one of our members, Diana Shaw, took in September, are active. They move. This movement is often personally challenging, bringing interaction with people or customs outside of our comfort zone. I have found it to be a humbling experience not to be able to communicate with those you meet on the trail or depending on others for help. So put on your hiking shoes and bring plenty of water as it gets very hot in the Galilee. Before hitting the trail, we'll spend a day in Nazareth. Today, a city of 75,000 inhabitants, predominantly Arab citizens of Israel, about 70% Muslim and 30% Christian. In Jesus' time, it was a Jewish city of perhaps 400 people. Joseph would have worked as a craftsman, either a stonemason or a carpenter. In the first chapter of Luke, we read that the angel Gabriel informed Mary that she would bear a son who would be the Messiah. A modern Roman Catholic basilica encloses a grotto that is considered by many to be the site of the Annunciation. It was not until recently that archaeologists found several structures which they dated to the time of Jesus. One excavation lies between the Sisters of Nazareth guest house and includes a tomb with a rolling stone. These types of tombs are very rare in the land of Israel. After finishing the day sightseeing, we'll spend the night in a restored 18th century Arab villa. The bedrooms feature lots of marble and domed ceilings reminiscent of Aladdin. In the morning, after a large Arab breakfast, we head out of Nazareth. Nazareth is located in a basin, so that going north there are about 400 steps to climb. Once we reach our road, we see a large newly built mosque, courtesy of Saudi Arabia. On our way, we follow the orange Jesus Trail blazes on rocks, trees, and posts, guiding us to move straight or turn, sometimes following the same routes as one of or more of Israel's many other trails. Our first stop is in the ancient city of Sepphoris. Sepphoris, now Zipporah, was a large Roman-influenced city. The Jewish population was well-to-do, cosmopolitan, and greatly influenced by Greek culture, as opposed to the rural, devoutly Jewish village of Nazareth, only 4 miles away. The people of Nazareth would have had very little in common and little interaction with the people of Sepphoris. This is borne out by recent excavations, which shows that they had very little pottery in common. Sepphoris is not referred to in the Bible, but receives considerable mention in other literature at the time of Jesus. There have been extensive excavations at Sepphoris, with most of the findings from a period later than the time of Jesus. These include a famous mosaic of the Nile River and another mosaic of a woman who has been called the Mona Lisa of the Galilee. Leaving Sepphoris, we hike past trees that are all around us, many having been planted in the last 60 years. Being Israel, rocks are everywhere. At last, we reach Cana and our guest house. We are greeted by the Palestinian Christian owners and offered lemonade after a hot day on the trail. We clean up and make our way to the wedding church. Cana is the traditional site of the wedding feast where Jesus performed his first miracle of changing water to wine, and is also the hometown of Nathanael, one of the 12 disciples. The Franciscan wedding church was built in 1879 at the location of where ancient stone jars were discovered. These jars are much larger than I could have ever imagined and were used to store water and wine. Fittingly, many couples choose to get married or renew their wedding vows here. In the morning, after a Palestinian breakfast, we leave Cana and hit the trail. The path continues through olive groves, which are a principal source of income for many small farmers. Olive trees thrive without a lot of moisture. The olive was one of the main elements of the ancient Israeli way of life. Olive oil was used not only for food and cooking, but also for lighting for lamps, sacrificial offerings, and anointing for priestly or royal office. Harvesting begins in mid-October and lasts through early December. Just as in the first century, the entire extended family comes to help harvest the olives, as it is a very labor-intensive undertaking. On the path, we may encounter small herds of sheep or goats with the herdsmen. We come to a ridge with the remains of an ancient Roman road, which was the major east-west highway and linked Acco on the Mediterranean coast with Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee. Knowing that Jesus likely used this road on his journeys from Nazareth to Capernaum really personalizes the gospel for us. When I am asked why I continue to return to the Holy Land, I give several reasons. One, it is a fascinating and troubling place, which will always be in the news. Number two, I love to study history, and in Israel there is so much to learn. Number three, and most importantly, seeing and touching strengthens my faith. I identify with the disciple Thomas, who wanted to examine the wounds of Jesus before he would believe that Jesus had been resurrected. I treasure the opportunity to take time to absorb the places of the Bible into my mind's eye. Reading the Bible has taken on a whole new dimension. The sights, smells, and tastes add to the richness of God's already living Word and provide me with a deeper understanding of the Bible. Christians often focus on the Bible for the spiritual meaning and forget its historical and geographical context. Here in the Galilee is where 2,000 years of Christianity began. Our Christian lineage is found here. Jesus said that the gospel would go out from Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria to the ends of the earth. When we pilgrimage to the Holy Land, we are in a large sense coming home. The trail continues to Kibbutz Lavi, one of the few Orthodox religious kibbutzes. Founded in 1949 by British immigrants, Kibbutz Lavi is the largest manufacturer of synagogue furniture in the world. They also operate a dairy farm and a large hotel. The kibbutz identifies itself as Pundak Lavi, or Lion's Inn, an ancient inn mentioned in the Jewish scriptures. As a religious community, Lavi observes Shabbat. There are rabbi-approved automatic cow milking machines, a Shabbat elevator, which stops on every floor, which assures that no one performs the labor of pressing a button, and a complete ban on driving and using electricity from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. The accommodations at Lavi are excellent, and after enjoying a refreshing shower, a great night's sleep, and a kosher breakfast, we continue our way east, soon arriving at the Horns of Hittim. They are remnants of volcanoes and the site of a decisive battle fought here in 1187. The Sunni Muslim Salah ad-Din defeated the Crusader army, which helped end the Crusader presence in the Holy Land. We descend from the Horns and walk past Nebi Shu'aib at the base of the hill. This building houses the traditional tomb of Jethro, the father-in-law of Moses and a prophet of the Druze religion. The Druze hold that Jethro passed on to Moses rules about justice and righteousness. The Druze religion dates back to 10th century Egypt as an offshoot of the Muslim religion, but has a unique set of beliefs and maintains a separate identity from mainstream Muslim and Christian Arabs in Israel. We continue to hike along a small stream in a valley. Beef cattle graze on both sides in the rocky hills, and we are reminded of Psalm 50, where God says that all of the animals of the forest are his, and the cattle on 1,000 hills. Near the end of the day, we climb slowly out of the deep valley and make our way to Moshav Arbel and the B&B run by an Israeli couple. He's a gourmet chef, and we greatly enjoy our fabulous dinner and breakfast. In the morning, we make our way up to the cliffs of Arbel, standing 700 feet above the Sea of Galilee. The cliffs provide a panoramic view stretching from the Golan Heights in the north to the Jordan River Valley in the south. The trail takes a steep but beautiful path down the cliffs. This is Beth's favorite part of the trail. You have to be careful as you descend. There are metal staples in the rock to assist you on the steepest section, but they are slippery when damp. The historian Josephus documented the Roman conquest of Jewish rebels living in the cliffs in the 1st century BC. Herod the Great sent soldiers over the edge of the cliff by lowering huge baskets. The soldiers then reached into the cliff dwellings and hurled the Jews to their death. We finished descending to the fertile plain of Gennesaret on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee, which is almost 700 feet below sea level and the second lowest lake in the world. The lowest is the Dead Sea, into which the Sea of Galilee flows via the Jordan River. We walk towards the lake and enter Magdala. In Jesus' time, it was known as Migdal. The fish pickled here were renowned throughout the Greek and Roman world. Magdala is known traditionally as the birthplace of Mary Magdalene. She is mentioned many times in the Gospels and witnessed Jesus' crucifixion. She is also the first eyewitness to the risen Christ. Archaeologists searched unsuccessfully for decades to find this town. In 2006, the Roman Catholic Church decided to build a pilgrimage retreat center at the Sea of Galilee. Israeli law requires that before any construction, Israeli antiquities authorities, archaeologists have to sign off that the area has been evaluated for possible ancient artifacts and structures. The archaeologists began their 5-month mandatory excavation in late July 2009. On September 1st, they made a remarkable discovery. Just below the surface, they unearthed the archaeological remnants of the ancient city of Migdal, including the only 1st century synagogue found around the Sea of Galilee. The retreat center had become a holy site. Of course, that changed the scope of the project. The buildings had to be repositioned and redesigned to accent the discoveries. Funding was obtained to continue the archaeological digs at the site and to showcase what had been found. The synagogue was fully excavated. One of the findings was a coin minted in Tiberias in 29 AD, which substantiated the supposition that the synagogue was from the 1st century. The synagogue was well preserved and included a study room and an area for storage of the Torah scrolls. During the excavation, one of the most significant recent archaeological finds in the Holy Land was unearthed, the Magdala stone, likely the earliest known artistic depiction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. The front of the stone depicts the oldest carved image of the temple's 7-branched menorah ever found. The long side of the stone shows the side of the building with pillared archways in a 3-dimensional design that creates the illusion of being inside the temple. The back side depicts wheels and fire representing the Holy of Holies. The excavations also uncovered a section of wealthy homes with many mikvahot, which were used for ritual cleansing. Warehouses and wharves have been unearthed, as have the central marketplace and shops. The worship center was the first new building to be completed with a remarkable altar. Its wood is in the shape of a 1st century Sea of Galilee fishing boat. The green marble on which the boat is surrounded is reminiscent of waves. A huge window flanks the altar and gives an unobstructed view of the lake. A small chapel in the lower floor of the worship center is of especial interest. Covering its floor are stones from the original first century Magdala marketplace, most certainly walked on by Jesus himself. Its 6 columns and color pigments on the wall are reproductions of the first century synagogue structures and frescoes. One wall is covered with a large modern painting entitled Encounter, which depicts the hemorrhaging woman who tries to touch Jesus for healing. The chapel is intended to evoke the atmosphere which the first generation of Jesus' disciples enjoyed when they gathered in the synagogue. We found this to be a powerful experience represented here by our feet, standing on the stones on which Jesus walked. With only 10% of the archaeology uncovered, the hometown of Mary Magdalene already provides pilgrims an authentic location to walk where Jesus taught and to connect with the first century life of Jesus' followers. We reluctantly depart from Magdala, shoulder our day packs, and continue on the trail, which leads us through a large grove of grapefruit trees. Unlike the arid land through which we passed earlier, this area's climate is affected by the Sea of Galilee with hot and humid summers, good for many types of citrus trees and for bananas. We look up and see a large hill, which is the traditional site where Jesus gave his Sermon on the Mount. Today on this hilltop there rests a tranquil garden with a Franciscan church providing great views of the Sea of Galilee. One of my favorite short hikes is climbing the hill from the main road. The path is a rutted farm road where you pass through hayfields and a newly planted banana grove. The views are exceptional and it is a wonderful place for contemplation. We continue on the sidewalk along the lake which leads to Capernaum. Capernaum served as Jesus' home during his ministry in the Galilee. The restored synagogue is from the 2nd to the 4th century AD, but the foundation on which it sits is probably from the synagogue where Jesus worshiped. The octagonal area, protected by a new church, has long been venerated as the House of Peter. The discovery of radical first century alterations and inspirational graffiti carved into its walls are among the circumstantial evidence that support the importance in early Christianity and leads many scholars to believe that this may be the actual home of Peter. Before we leave Capernaum, let's go out by the lake and rest a bit. While the Sea of Galilee is calm today, I have seen it with very high waves, and they come up quickly due to the changing weather patterns on the lake. For our final lodging, we'll go to a German Catholic guest house situated on the shores of the lake. We can go swimming there, watch baptisms, and view the antics of the Hyraxes as they sun themselves. Much of the cuisine is German, as is the language of the guests. My favorite places in the Holy Land to stay are Christian guest houses. Over dinner, I can meet and fellowship with believers from all over the world. I meet Christians with much different heritages than my own. Most of them I've never heard of, but we are united by our belief in the risen Savior, Jesus Christ. Each of us is changed by our travels and conversations. Even though we didn't live in Jesus' time, our faith is strengthened by walking in his footsteps. Beth and I hope that you enjoyed the hike and are also drawn closer to him and perhaps inspired to take a pilgrimage of your own. Thank you.